All right, let's jump right in. We're about to unpack one of the most dramatic, kind of puzzling, and seriously powerful stories in the entire Hebrew Bible. We're talking about the Book of Esther. It's got everything: palace drama, life-or-death stakes, and some unbelievable courage.
But here's the thing that makes it so fascinating. What if I told you that in this story from the Bible, the most important character is never even mentioned by name? I'm serious. In the entire Book of Esther, God's name doesn't appear once, not a single time. And that's what makes it so wild. It forces you, it invites you to look for a hidden hand, for some kind of purpose working behind the scenes, especially when it feels like there's nothing there.
All right, Section 1. A queen is chosen. So, let's set the scene. Our story kicks off in the massive, super powerful Persian Empire. Think unbelievable wealth, but also, a place where things could go wrong fast.
So for a little bit of context, this is all happening more than 100 years after the Babylonian exile. The Jewish people had been taken from their land, and while some went back, a lot of them, including the people in our story, are still living scattered across the Persian Empire. We find ourselves right in the capital city, Susa, during the reign of this king, Ahasuerus. You might also know him as Xerxes.
Okay, so the king decides to throw this epic party, and I mean epic. It lasts for 187 days. The whole point is to show off how rich and powerful he is. On the very last day, he's completely wasted, and he makes this demand of his queen Vashti. He tells her to come out and parade her beauty in front of all his drunk friends. He's basically treating her like a trophy, and she says no.
And you can guess what happens next. The king flies into a rage and just gets rid of her. Vashti, the defiant queen, is banished for standing up for herself. This kicks off a search for a new queen, and that's where a young Jewish orphan named Hadassah gets pulled into the whole thing. Her cousin Mordecai gives her some critical advice: hide who you are. So she takes on the name Esther, which actually means hidden. Total opposite of Vashti's public defiance, right?
So Esther becomes the new queen, and right away we get the first of these major coincidences. Her cousin Mordecai, well, he just so happens to be hanging out by the palace gate one day and overhears two guards plotting to assassinate the king. No big deal, right? He gets a message to Esther, she tells the king, the plot is foiled, and Mordecai saves the day. His good deed gets written down in the official royal records, and then crickets. It's just forgotten. Or so it seems.
So Esther is queen, things are looking okay, but then the music changes. A really, really bad guy is about to step onto the stage.
The king promotes this dude named Haman to be his second in command, and the story gives him this very specific title, the Agagite. Now that might not mean much to us, but it's a huge clue. The Agagites were ancient, sworn enemies of the Jewish people, so Haman's hatred, it's got deep historical roots. This isn't just a random feud.
So the king says everyone has to bow down to Haman, but Mordecai refuses. As a faithful Jew, he'll only bow to God. Well, this sends Haman into a blind rage, and when he finds out Mordecai is Jewish, his personal beef just explodes into this horrifying genocidal plot. He goes to the king and convinces him to sign a decree to destroy all the Jews in the entire empire, just like that.
And to pick the date for this mass murder, Haman casts lots, which in Hebrew is the word por. Remember that, it's important. The date that comes up is the 13th of Adar. That's about 11 months away. So now there's a literal countdown, a ticking clock for the annihilation of an entire people.
Okay, the decree is out. Absolute terror is spreading, and all hope now falls on the shoulders of the one person who can get to the king, our hidden queen, Esther. Mordecai gets word to Esther, begging her to do something. But think about the risk here. It's literally life or death. Persian law was clear. If you walk in on the king without an invitation, you can be executed on the spot. Your only hope is if he holds out his golden scepter to you. And here's the kicker. The king hasn't even asked to see Esther for a whole month.
Esther, understandably, is scared. She hesitates, and Mordecai sends back this incredible challenge. He basically says, don't think for a second you're safe just because you live in the palace. Help will come for our people one way or another, but if you do nothing, you're going down. And then he hits her with this line, who knows, perhaps you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. He's telling her that her whole life, everything she's been through, might have been leading to this one single moment. And that's it. That's the turning point. Esther steps up. She tells Mordecai to have all the Jews in the city fast for her for 3 days. She and her maids will do the same. And after that, she's going to the king, breaking the law. And her words are just unforgettable. If I perish, I perish. Wow. She is fully prepared to die for her people.
Okay, Section 4, the Great Reversal. Esther's choice kicks off this unbelievable chain reaction. It's full of twists, turns, and delicious irony. The bad guy's plans are about to blow up in his face.
So Esther goes to the king, and he spares her. But she doesn't spill the beans right away. She's playing the long game. First, she invites the king and Haman to a banquet. That night, Haman is so mad at Mordecai he builds a giant gallows just to hang him on. But then, another one of those coincidences, the king can't sleep. So he asks for the royal records to be read to him. And what does he hear? The story of how Mordecai saved his life and never got a reward for it. The timing is just insane, because the very next morning, Haman shows up, ready to ask permission to hang Mordecai, and instead, the king forces him to publicly honor his enemy in a grand parade. It's incredible.
Haman is just completely humiliated. And that night, he has to go to Esther's second banquet. And this is where she finally drops the bomb. She reveals that she's Jewish, and that Haman is the one who plotted to murder her and her people. The king loses it.
And this is it, the great reversal in its full glory. Haman's fate? He gets executed on the very gallows he built for Mordecai. It's just perfect, poetic justice. And Mordecai? He gets elevated. He's made second in command, taking the very position Haman just lost. You can't make this stuff.
But wait, there's still a problem. That first death decree, it's still active, and under Persian law, it can't be canceled. So what do? The king gives Mordecai the power to write a new decree. This one allows the Jewish people to fight back, to defend themselves on that fateful day. So their scheduled day of destruction becomes a day of deliverance, a day of victory. And that's why the festival of Purim is celebrated to this very day.
All right, Section 5. Why does this story matter? After all that, what are we supposed to take away from this wild story about a hidden god and a brave queen? Well, first, it seems to be saying that God's providence, his hidden plan, can be working behind the scenes right in the middle of all the mess of human history. It also tells us that real courage and trust are possible, even when things are morally complicated and you're in a crisis. It's a fantastic picture of how evil plans can be turned completely upside down, and really, it's a model of hope for anybody who's ever felt like God is just absent.
And that really gets to the core of it. The Book of Esther asks us to be willing to trust God's providence even when we can't see it working. You know, none of the characters are perfect angels. There's a lot of questionable stuff happening. But they aren't held up as models of perfection. They're held up as models of trust. Trusting that there's a bigger plan, even when you can't see it.
So that leaves us with this big question. When God seems absent, where do we find hope? The Book of Esther doesn't just hand us a simple answer. Instead, it gives us a story that suggests hope is found when people act with courage, when we learn to trust the coincidences, and when we dare to believe that even when things are at their worst, a great reversal might be just around the corner.